What's going on, guys? My name is Julian Young. I am the editor and founder of the Blockchain Brief, and we are excited to welcome you to another episode of Token Tank. Here at Token Tank, we invite a promising blockchain and crypto project to pitch or update their project to our panel of experts. Our panelists are focused solely on asking great questions to project founders so that you, our valued viewers, can make your own crypto calls. Now, for today's panelists, I am here with CryptoCandor, the leading lady of conversations in crypto, the crypto Lark, more than just the Lark blockchain, Mr. K-Dub, the hungriest zombie in the crypto lands, and today I am beyond excited to have Mance Harmon, the CEO of Hashgraph, with us. Now, Mance, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic stuff. All right, so let's kick things off. So why don't you kind of just go ahead and give us the elevator pitch of Hedera Hashgraph?
Sure. Well, Hedera is a particular implementation of the Hashgraph algorithm specifically for the creation of a public network. And it's more than just technology. Hedera as an organization solves fundamental problems associated with technology, of course, using the Hashgraph algorithm, but then also attempts to address market problems that have prevented the mainstream adoption of public DLTs. And Hedera is a council. It's both a network and a council of 39, ultimately 39 global enterprises, biggest companies in the world, not a bunch of banks, geo-distributed, not all in the United States or any single geography, across 18 markets, and also distributed across time. The members rotate out of the council over time. So it's meant to be the most decentralized governing body of any of the public networks. And of course, it's using the Hashgraph algorithm to create this public platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a great introduction, Mance. Thank you. And you were talking about the algorithm. I kind of wanted to dive a little bit into the tech right off the bat. I think that's a big concern of a lot of people. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your consensus model. So you have ABFT, which is asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. So can you explain why you chose this model and why you think it's superior to existing models out there?
Well, certainly. So my co-founder, Lehman Baird, PhD from Carnegie Mellon University in Comp Sci, he invented the algorithm. And it's not that we chose this algorithm per se. Asynchronous BFT is the strongest level of security that one can achieve in the field of distributed consensus. It's been known and understood to be that way, that the most secure that one can achieve for decades. It's not something we made up, but it's been difficult to achieve at scale. And the invention, the value that Hashgraph brings to the market is that Lehman figured out how to do it at scale for the first time. And so, we've always assumed that if this market's going to grow up and these platforms are going to process trillions of dollars of value, ultimately, that's what we all hope and expect, then you've got to start with the very best building block, the most secure platform, starting with the algorithm. And then the building that you build with that block, those bricks, turns out to look very different than if you didn't start with the most secure brick in the first place. So it's not a choice. It was a discovery, a fundamental leap in the state of the art, and we decided to take that and build what we hope to be is the most secure of any of the public platforms, starting with the algorithm.
I like the idea that you're talking about the building bricks as the foundation, because we've really seen that problem playing out with many of the major public blockchains. Obviously, the Bitcoin forking situation has been a real detriment to the Bitcoin community. Now, you're claiming that Hashgraph will be unforkable. Now, recently, we did see that even Neo, using their DBFT, also claimed to be unforkable, but we did actually have two blocks propagated at the same block height. So how can you actually go forward with that statement that, Hashgraph will be unforkable?
Well, there are two parts to that. One is we're building in mechanisms that make it possible for software clients to fundamentally know if it were to fork, which of the remaining two networks now is the official network. So this is one of the fundamental problems in the industry. If the platform forks, and we all know that the open source platforms will, what happens to the applications running on them? If the state is split into two and you've got all these software clients out there, they are now confused about what's real and what's not. And you got to solve that problem. And you can do it in a couple of ways. One is with a technology approach, so that without going very technical, each network ends up having a name that can't be cloned. And the clients, when they're connecting to the network, before they process transactions with the network, they check to see that the name of the network is what they expect it to be. And you can have the official network always know, even if it were to fork. That's part one. Part two is that Hashgraph as an algorithm is patented. And I realize that we are sort of bucking the industry in the fact that we are patenting the technology. But we're doing it for a very specific reason. We recognize the value of the open source model in that we want to keep the code source open for public review, and we will, in the future with V1, open the code source for review. People will be able to read the lines of code and look for bugs. We'll have bug bounties and all that standard stuff that you get with an open source project. And you don't have to come and talk to us to get a license. And so there's no license required in the way that most proprietary software requires a license. We don't. It would just be like Ethereum or any of the other platforms to use it. But because it's patented, we can make a promise to the market that insofar as we are able, we will guarantee that this platform will not fork. And so it's a legal guarantee, along with some technical mechanisms to help out in the event it were to fork if something went wrong or haywire.
Mance, considering that Swirlds is the licensor of your underlying Hashgraph technology and the platform is actually patented, do you guys have, I mean, for fear of say like a kill switch or an emergency shutoff, should we be concerned about the centralization and the patents and the ownership like that? Like, is there a way you could just dead the entire platform if you really wanted to?
Well, if we did, it would prevent us from realizing the goal. So from the very beginning, what we've done is structured all the legal agreements in such a way between Swirlds and Hedera that even if Swirlds were to be bought by, who knows, anybody, or Swirlds happen to become insolvent in some way, or something bad happens to Swirlds, Hedera is protected. Hedera continues to be able to use the technology. And Hedera is the 39, right? It's not Swirlds. It's literally the 39 that are the owners of Hedera. They each, by design, have equal weight in the ownership and in the voting process. Swirlds as a company is one of those 39. It is unique in that Swirlds will always be one of the 39. The other 38 rotate out after either 3 or 6 years. So Swirlds does have that unique position that it's a permanent member, but it has no more voting power or control, if you will, over this public network than any one of the other 39. And so from an IP property rights perspective, Hedera as an organization is protected and can continue to use the technology no matter what happens. And with the transparency in the code base, people know what the code is, right? I mean, they can download the software. Anybody that wants to run a node at scale, it's not just the 39 that are running nodes, it's everybody that wants to.
Oh, everyone can run a node.
Oh yeah, it's not, I mean, so you got to go from where we are, which is a network of 39 as a starting point. But ultimately it's an open, permissionless network with tens of thousands of nodes. Each node is identical in terms of the way it works. There are no master nodes or super nodes or special block producers or whatever you want to call them. They're all the same. And everyone can see the code base and, there's transparency.
So on the topic of being open source, when do you guys actually plan on releasing the version 1 for public review? And
the goal is...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all. The goal is... either as we approach version 1 or we get to version 1. I don't know exact date there, but we do recognize the importance of having that transparency there for the market for the reasons I just said, right? We want people to know there is no back door, and it would be the case even if we didn't open it up. It would be the case that developers we'll be able to decompile it and look at it. The base part of this platform, the software stack, the bottom of the stack is the Swirlds Hashgraph SDK, and that's written entirely in Java. So you can look at it if you really want to. You know, even today, you could download the SDK and decompile and see what's there. So, yeah, I can't give you an exact date. The goal is for us to be version 1 in Q1 of next year, roughly 6 months from now. And, you know, if we stay on track and everything, it's going to be roughly that time frame. But, you know, schedules sometimes slip, but it's in that time period.
So are you concerned at all the fact that you're not open source may lead to less innovation or like interest in building on the platform itself?
Yeah,
not
also,
really.
Man, just to quickly add on that too. So just to be clear, to build on top of Hedera, will you need a license?
Not at all.
Okay.
You don't even have to talk to us.
Okay,
no.
got it.
So, I mean, the market is really split into a couple of different kinds of developers. One are those developers that really want to be able to tinker with the platform itself, the consensus software itself, or those that are building applications on the platform, and they know that if they don't like the the roadmap of the platform, the feature set that whomever it is that's controlling it, and everybody, all these platforms have some group of people controlling them ultimately, right? Whomever it is that are making those feature decisions for the roadmap, if they don't like that roadmap, then they want to fork it and go do their own thing. So we get it, and I can certainly appreciate that sentiment. We're not for them. Right? There are dozens. Everybody else in the market is that, right? And so what we're doing is actually offering an alternative for the first time to the part of the developer community that's never going to tinker with the consensus algorithm. What they really want is a highly performant platform that is enterprise grade and that is stable in ways that no one else is, right? And has a governance council that they trust to not collude with one another to do bad things, right? And so a lot of people will talk about the council, you know, this is a bunch of big enterprises. How can you trust them? The real question is, think about the alternative, right? You have a currency here, and you got to go from zero, practically zero value, to high value, and the currency broadly distributed in the market. And there are steps along that path. And if I were to just take 39 of my friends and give them nodes and give them some currency, and then the value of the currency, and they're voting, by the way, they're voting the weight of this currency. It's a proof of stake system, ultimately. They're voting the weight of this currency, and the value of that currency begins to rise. Does the market, enterprise developers that are considering spending $2 million to build an enterprise app on top of us, do they trust those 39 individuals not to steal the money or do bad things? Probably not. But they do trust the largest companies in the world to care about their brands. They have far more invested in their brands, and any money that they make running nodes is tiny in terms of their revenue. They're not going to collude. They're both distributed across markets, and they're the biggest companies in the world. They're not going to collude with one another over this period.
Are you guys primarily focused? Are you guys primarily focused on enterprise? Is that your go-to market right out the gate?
We had from the beginning understood what, we had a vision for what this global platform would look like, and how we get from where we are in the market today to broad scale market adoption. And the startup community is absolutely important. But the enterprise community is what's going to be required to get to market, full-blown market adoption. And so what we've done is we've both chosen the 39 for all the reasons that I've just previously described. The trust model of the network depends on these kinds of organizations being the council members, but they're also leaders in their industries, and they're cutting edge. And they have applications that they're going to build on top of our public platform, and those that are in their industry will follow their lead. So, yes, absolutely, we've focused on enterprise, but having said that, it's a horizontal platform. It's not as though they're, quote, enterprise features. They're a set of APIs that let you use cryptocurrency and file storage and smart contracts. That's true for any application, whether you're a startup building something out of your garage or you're a big enterprise.
Man, can you share with us who some of the 39 members are that are a part of the governing board?
I can't yet, but I can soon. So the process that we've been going through, it was first to begin getting letters of intent. I mean, we chose initially, we normally get this question, who's choosing the 39? To start with, it was us. We had this vision for what this council should look like, and we wanted to choose the members to be distributed or decentralized in the way that we've described. And so we've gone literally, we set the bar as high as we could set it, and we've gone to the biggest companies in the world with the best brands. And we got letters of intent. And what that means is that they've signed a document that says, yeah, pending our signing the full membership agreement, we intend to join your organization and participate as a governing member. Of the 39, we have 20 letters of intent signed today. That gives you some idea. We've got representation from Australia, from Asia, from the United States, from Europe, from India, from South America. We're missing Africa and the Middle East, but we will get those regions covered as well. Now, that was number one. And then we moved from there to the point of getting to where we're preparing to sign the full-blown membership agreement. And we're within weeks of having the first members sign that. And the goal is to be able to announce that first set of members hopefully sometime in September. That's the goal. So, but we're making great progress. But when we do that, then we'll announce the names.
How long are they holding these seats for when they get a seat, one of these 39 people? You said it's going to be distributed across time. So how long will they actually be entitled to holding that seat once they've signed on?
So 3 years to start. And then they have to be voted on. So if a member is participating at the 3-year point, the rest of the council votes to decide whether they'll extend them for another 3 years, presuming they want a second term. And if they get the second term, then it's another 3 years, and then they're out after that. So it's a max of 6 years, 2 3-year
term limits. That's great.
Term limits, yeah.
Mance, what are the incentives for these different governing members? And then also too, like how much of Hedera do these guys collectively own?
Yeah, let me start with that, and then I'll go back to the incentives. Zero. They own zero of Hedera. And so what they do is they run the nodes. You know, the initial network will be a network of 39 nodes. Hedera has a wallet as an organization that's got a set of tokens in it, and those tokens then are staked. The weight of those tokens are staked to the 39. So take the Hedera wallet, you split it into 39 parts, and you stake that weight to each of the 39. The 39 are running the nodes, and therefore they're voting 1/39 of the weight of the tokens held by Hedera.
And what percentage of token supply is that?
So on day one, when we open the network to be generally available, we will float about, I think it's 6%. Yeah, 6% of the total token supply. Over the first year, we expect to get up to 10%. We're going to take 5 years to get to a third. And there's a very specific reason for that. This is proof of stake system. It's asynchronous BFT. Instead of one computer, one vote, it's one token, one vote. That's how you weight it. It's very simple compared to the other systems in the market.
Is that what you mean when you refer to proxy staking? Because many people are just going to call this a glorified DPoS, essentially.
It's not at all.
Okay.
It's not at all. It's different. So if you have a wallet, you can elect, anybody that has a wallet can elect to give the weight of the coins in their wallet to another full node. And there are various reasons why they might want to do that. The model is that those nodes all nodes that have a wallet and are voting, they get compensated for the work that they're doing in supporting the API calls, processing the API calls. And the amount of compensation that they get is a function of the number of coins in the wallet. And so this makes it possible to do a lot of different very cool things. But one of those is that 39, going back to your question of what's the incentive, one of the incentives is that the 39, each are running a node. They are voting 1/39th of the total supply in Hedera's wallet, and they get compensated for that. So there's that direct motivation for wanting to be able to do that. But frankly, that's minor. I mean, that's not why they're doing this. They will get that compensation in crypto, but you know, many of them, frankly, aren't taking the crypto because they don't want it. They can't take it, and so they're donating it to charities or whatever. We had to accommodate them not to take the crypto. So
take our cryptocurrency.
Probably the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Hey, so Mance, just while we're on the topic of like transaction fees from validating nodes, I'm just curious why you guys made the decision to have those transaction fees first go to the Hedera Foundation before paying out the validators, as opposed to just going directly to the validators.
It has to do with the way that you bring on new nodes. So it's dynamic. New nodes are coming on board all the time. And you need to be able to do several things, including incentivize nodes to stay online. You want to prevent churn. And you want to be able to, you need to know for a given period of time how many nodes are in the network. And so there are a variety of technical reasons why we are basically collecting the tokens, and then on a nightly basis for a given set of nodes, we are paying out their pro rata portion of the proceeds or the revenue, and then recalculating what their weight is for the next 24 hours. And then they get paid for the next 24 hours based on what their weight was at that point in time. It's all about the math and making the system work. You have to be able to do something like this as opposed to just automatically giving it to the nodes as soon as it comes in.
So considering that IOTA has no fees, why did you guys decide on a low fee model?
A no fee or a low fee? A low fee model? There are always costs, right? And there's no free lunch, period. No free lunch, period. And part of what will happen, I predict, as the market matures and some of these platforms continue to get more and more usage, is that they will realize that they didn't account for the costs of their model up front, and so they have to make changes that are painful to make. Ethereum is in this category where they're now recognizing the need for rent for those files that are staying on servers forever. You know, there was a payment made up front that a file can be on the server forever for no additional cost. That's not realistic. And so what we've done is look very carefully at where all of the costs are, and then built a system that makes it possible to make sure that all of those costs are paid, even at the micro level, and that you can build a real economy that's sustainable from the very beginning rather than having to try and retrofit it in the future.
So compared to IOTA, IOTA is essentially a DAG. You guys are not technically a DAG, right? It's different?
No, technically we are a DAG.
Oh, you are?
The question is, what does this DAG represent?
Okay.
I mean, it's a data structure, and the information in the data structure represents something. In our case, what this data structure represents is the gossip that has taken place between the nodes in the network over a period of time. That's unique in the industry, and that, you know, this gossip about gossip protocol makes it possible to then use a consensus algorithm to calculate what the nodes in the network would vote if they were to cast their vote. I mean, so what the DAG represents makes it possible to do the magic that we do, basically consensus without having to talk to anybody about the votes.
Right. Well, one of the issues that people that I keep bringing up in my community in regards to DAG is the lack of timestamps. However, technically you guys are saying you can do that. So how are you going to be able to generate these timestamps? And if so, who is going to be generating them?
No, this goes to the core of how we work, right? So when a transaction gets gossiped into the network, that transaction, when it's received by every node in the network, gets a timestamp, a received timestamp by all the nodes. And then what we do is we line up the received timestamps for all the nodes in the network and take the median of that, the middle timestamp. So if there are 20 nodes in the network, they all receive it at a certain time. You take all those timestamps, receive timestamps, line them up, choose the middle one. That's the consensus timestamp. Every transaction gets a consensus timestamp. And then it's as simple as lining up all the transaction in consensus timestamp order, and you're done. You've linearized all the transactions. You have consensus.
Wow.
I want to follow up on actually the amounts of transactions per second, because we have a lot of claims about transactions per second. And currently, I think Hashgraph's claiming around a few 100,000 transactions per second, which is obviously a lot, and that's in a controlled environment in terms of testing. We've seen a lot of different DLT companies saying, hey, we're going to do X amount of thousand of transactions when they actually deploy their mainnet. Like, well, we're only doing like 2 out of 10 that we promised now, but we'll get there later. Do you think you'll actually be able to deliver that promise once you do hit that public mainnet?
Lark, can I actually add to that question as well? Speaking of DLT platforms, and they have had trade-offs with decentralization, potentially compromising security, right, for performance gains, but you claim to be both fast and secure. So as well, how are you able to achieve that through the consensus on top of what Lark also said?
It's asynchronous BFT, number one. You can't do better than that. And because of the way the protocol works, basically we're bandwidth limited. You give me a bigger pipe, I'm going to give you more transactions per second. And so we achieve the max that, theoretically, let me say it this way, theoretically, we achieve the max that one can achieve. Now, obviously, there's the implementation, and we are building the first version of this, and we've put a lot of work into creating a gossip protocol that is efficient, but there is engineering work that will take place over years to continue improving the performance and getting to that point where you actually have optimized everything and you do achieve the limits of what is possible. But the algorithm and the architecture and the approach achieves the limits of what is possible. Let me say it that way. Now, will we get to where we've claimed? What we've demonstrated and what we've said on stage back in March especially was that we've demonstrated hundreds of thousands of transactions per second using the algorithm to put transactions in order only. And and we said from stage, that was not the full-blown system where you've got the cryptocurrency transactions and you've got to do signature validation and you got to make changes in memory to the accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Even so, what we expect and hope is that for cryptocurrency transactions, micropayments, for example, to be able to achieve 100,000 transactions per second or better. Now, smart contracts, they weigh more, right, in terms of their CPU usage and file storage. It's a whole other thing as well. I don't know where we're going to end up on that. We'll find out. We'll see. But when it comes to using this as a cryptocurrency and making using it for all the value that cryptocurrencies bring, including native support for micropayments, payments where Alice pays Bob a fraction of a cent and does it on graph as opposed to in something separate like the Lightning Network or side channels of any form. Nope. On graph, yeah, our goal is 100,000 transactions per second, full blown.
So have you done any real world tests for that, like outside of being in an ideal case?
Well, yes, but they're not on the network that we want to deploy yet. So the test, when you say real world, no, I mean, we don't have a mainnet where we've got a dozen enterprises using it today. No, we are building that. In fact, the mainnet goes live. It's going to be live by the time this airs. So
awesome.
Yeah. In fact, Lehman and I are going back to Cedar Park, Texas, just outside of Austin, where all this started in 2015. And we're going to push the button there to launch the mainnet and take some pictures.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Cool. So you guys just finished. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Julian. You good?
So, Mance, you guys have just finished up your crowd sale today to accredited investors. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it.
Today, Wednesday? It was yesterday. I can't remember what
it'll be Monday when this episode goes live, but yeah.
There you go.
It'll be nice.
So I want to talk a little bit about your raise. So you guys raised a total of 120 million. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, and then
roughly. I mean, we've still got to do the audit on exactly what's happened over the 2 weeks.
Yeah,
but yes, we've approached that.
So I'm curious as to why you guys decided to raise that much. I'm also curious a little bit about the justification for the valuation on your end as well for that raise. So if you wouldn't mind sort of recapping what that valuation was, and then just kind of walking into like how you put those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, the valuation, just to say it for the viewer, the valuation for the total supply of tokens was 6 billion or 4.8. You had a couple of choices depending on the release schedule. If you hold the tokens for 4 years, it could have been 4.8. If you want liquidity all next year, then it was 6 billion. However, remember what I said earlier, only 6% of the total supply is going to be floated to the market. So that's $360 million of supply. You take that and you compare it to all the peer platforms, those that we would consider peers in the market today. That's about an order of magnitude lower than where they are in terms of their circulating supply value. Right
and
now,
what's the release schedule, Mance?
Yeah, the release schedule over the first year is only up to 10%, and over 5 years, it's only up to a third for security reasons. And it goes back to this proof of stake system. Once you get beyond a third, then it becomes technically possible for a bad actor to own. If a bad actor owns a third or more of the tokens, then they can do a Sybil attack. So the council will hold 2/3 for a really long period of time until it's practically impossible for that to ever happen, for a bad actor to own a third. Then the council will sell down Treasury and it will be broadly distributed and commoditized, et cetera, and there's no issue. But the point is, yeah, everybody talked about the 6 billion market cap. That's true. But really, if you look at what the traders are looking at and what the market values, it's the circulating supply. And we're a tenth of our peers, or at least we were 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Market changes, huge swings day by day. But that's part of it. And the other thing is that we, compared to the peers, we're pretty late in this process, right? I mean, we have a mainnet that is going to launch, even though it's restricted, it's not for general use. And this technology has been in development for years. And the value of the technology, I know we're making some strong claims. And I realize that we've said we've got a council of these fantastic partners and no one knows their name, right? I get all that. But they will, and they will relatively soon. And we'll demonstrate the value of the network, right? So, we know what we have.
Quick follow-up on that. So what do you guys plan on doing with the 120 million?
So Liam and I are very conservative when it comes to money. We've done several startups before. And so what we've done actually is, so this is more information than I've ever shared before, but what we've done is made sure that we have enough money to go for 3 years without having to raise any more money, fully expecting to be liquid in Q1 of next year. Now, we achieve those goals, then we have a lot of money left over, and we have talked about potentially working with somebody to create an ecosystem fund is what we would call it, and that would help build the ecosystem primarily through the startup community. I mean, the big enterprises, that doesn't help with the big enterprises at all. It doesn't matter how much money you have to invest. The biggest companies in the world don't want your money. What they want is the best platform and the best technology and a governance model they believe in. And so while we don't need to be raising billions of dollars to sort of brute force the ecosystem because of our model and what we're doing, we do recognize there's value in the startups, and we want to work with the best startups in the market. And we're doing that both by having the best technology, by having the best governance model, and where it's appropriate, maybe by partnering from a financial perspective.
I appreciate your transparency on that. That's a big concern for a lot of people, and it's nice to see how you actually are going to be using that moving forward. So thank you, Mance, for that.
Sure, sure. Well, and the other thing is, look, everybody, I mean, look at our peers. Compared to our peers, we haven't raised that much money. And that's by design, right? There was no need, number one. And number two, we want to keep Treasury the way it is. We want to have a big Treasury. And the reason we want to have a big Treasury and be able to sell the tokens out of Treasury into the market and bring a lot of fiat into Treasury is because we will then have an organization that is a natural buyer of the token when market conditions say, you know what, we need to prop up the value of the token. We will have billions of dollars there in fiat to be able to do exactly that, all by design, right?
So that 120 million raised, are you guys keeping it in fiat, or are you guys keeping it in the cryptocurrency?
Absolutely. No way. Fiat. So when it came in...
Oh, no, don't say that. What are you doing to the show?
No. Well, look, it's all about your risk profile, right? And so we're here to build...
Put it in tether. Keep it in tether. You'll be good. Be safe.
We're here to build a 100-year organization. And the way you do that is by placing, risk where, addressing risk where it needs to be addressed.
We've actually seen some ICOs that raised back when Ethereum was $1,000, and now they've sold when it was $300 or $400, and they've lost 60% of their operating capital. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing is this: remember, we are a cryptocurrency platform. It doesn't make any sense for us to own or hold Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything else, because when that goes up and goes down, the value of our own token goes up and goes down, and we have billions of dollars of tokens, right? So it makes no financial sense for us to be adding somebody else's tokens to our portfolio.
Yeah, no,
it's all correlated.
Awesome, guys. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Candor, KW, will hop in.
I actually have one. With protocols popping up every minute, there's always new projects coming about. What are you guys doing to draw interest to have people develop on your platform and kind of get that competitive edge in the market?
Yeah, honestly, we haven't had to do anything. I mean, we don't pay for advertisements or things like this. The community has just sort of virally understood the value proposition that we offer, and it's all grown on its own. So we have developers coming to us all the time. We have a backlog of more than 100 dApps that are ready to begin development when we make it possible for them to do so. And look, everybody understands that the existing platforms have severe constraints, right? And so all the development community is looking for something that offers the promise of relieving those constraints. And we're benefiting from that. So we are having our first developer conference, Hedera 18, in October in Dallas, and we're going to have a global hackathon at the same time across Singapore, Dallas, London, Sao Paulo, and Tel Aviv, 5 cities. And we're supporting the developer community. We're going to have a program where the developer community can do a little work for us, and we will pay them tokens for doing that. And so we want to engage the developer community.
One question that I'm sorry to cut you off, but one question that I know the development community is going to ask. You guys are really pushing Solidity on your website. Do you plan on offering different languages to be able to develop in the future?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, Solidity is sort of the default smart contract engine today. And we recognize that there are a lot of Solidity scripts out there that exist already. We want to be backward compatible with those. But Solidity, as it's written today, does have some fundamental constraints architecturally. I mean, when the developers built Solidity, they assumed a certain throughput. When you go from 15 transactions per second to 100,000 transactions per second, the architecture of it is totally different, right? And so while we're starting with Solidity to provide the backward compatibility, we absolutely will have, if not one, multiple other smart contract engines in the future that could take advantage of the platform.
Great, awesome. That's really good to hear. And you spoke about the grassroots movement. I mean, isn't that what this whole thing started as with Bitcoin? There's no marketing, there's no promoting. It was all grassroots. So it's really interesting to see you guys growing as well. I have one final question and then I'm out. But my last question I wanted to ask you was, you guys really, obviously you seem to be playing it very razor sharp, very by the books. We know the governments are slowly becoming more and more involved in this space every single day. So is regulation something that concerns you? And how do you plan on dealing with potential future regulatory compliances?
regulation does not concern me. We embrace it. We think it's absolutely required for this to go mainstream. It will not go mainstream until the rules are in place. That's what regulation means. We understand the rules as a community of what works and what doesn't work. And once we understand those rules, then those that want to use the platform and those that want to invest the platform, all of that opens up. And if there are no rules, there's uncertainty. So we embrace the regulation. You're right, we are buttoned up. I would say if you lined up all the different platforms in the market and their posture as it relates to regulatory concerns and playing it by the rules or whatever, however you want to characterize it, we're at the far right as far as you can go. And that's by design because we know the rules are coming and we do want to survive the rules, right? And so that's part of it. The other part is in the platform itself, we're building the infrastructure that makes it possible for users to use something we call opt-in identity escrow. And basically, it makes it possible for any given jurisdiction, any given government to decide under what circumstances it's going to regulate this, but have no influence over what any other jurisdiction does. And they'll have the technology there to be able to implement that regulation. So the US will be able to pass its laws and implement it in our platform, but it won't have any bearing on what happens in Russia and vice versa.
I think when we see your stance towards regulation and compliance, it really makes sense that there was no public sale, because I know that having a general public sale can be very, very difficult in terms of, compliance and all these things. So in terms of it going to the accredited investors and things like this, it really makes sense through that lens of trying to be as compliant as possible.
Well, yeah, and I know that a lot of people were disappointed that they weren't able to participate directly because it was an accredited only, and not just that, there were many countries that we couldn't just take money from, period, for all of these legal concerns and reasons. And look, selfishly, I would love to have just sold tokens to whomever wanted them, right? We could have raised a lot more money. We could have raised billions of dollars also if we didn't take this posture. But you start with this range of demand, and then you have this funnel, and at the end of the funnel, there are only a few people that we can take money from and know that we're not going to get shut down or sued or whatever it is. And for that reason, that was another factor in our decision making.
If longevity is the goal, that's something you got to be aware of, right?
It's not a scam, right? We're not here to scam people. We're here to build a platform that is the next, it's the next payment infrastructure for the 21st century.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I think we're about We're about finished up here tonight. So this wraps up this episode of Token Tank with Hedera Hashgraph. Thank you so much for joining us, Mance. Now, audience, we'd love your feedback on what you think about Hedera Hashgraph. Please be sure to put your comments below, and don't forget to tune in for the next episode of Token Tank. Yeah. So what are your guys' thoughts on Hashgraph?
Yeah, let's do it.
My biggest thing I think that struck me at first, which I'm kind of always on the fence about, is regulation. But I mean, the fact that he said, he knows that it's coming and that's what he's planning for is smart, and he's playing the long game, because let's be realistic. I mean, there's going to be some sort of regulation in some capacity, and in order for mass adoption to happen in some way, shape, or form, regulation is going to have to be a necessary evil. Not to say that all projects require it or going to need it, but in order for crypto to become something that we see day to day, I think the regulation is really going to have to happen. And I'm impressed that that's something that they're, doing by design, is what he said pretty much. So that was definitely something. Considering that most projects don't really talk about that, or, even down to doing their initial sale, they didn't do a public sale because they knew that long term it wouldn't benefit the project. So
in terms of what can be listed on Coinbase too, and that always seems to be some kind of metric that we work by as a community, but that's actually quite important, being that so compliant. That's why, Cardano, they actually did a really specific sale to a very small group of investors, and it does kind of then make them compliant because they know that they sold to high net worth individuals in Japan only, right? Yep. And Hashgraph did it slightly differently, but it's still very compliant.
I just wish that there was still more distribution, right? I think it's still too much of an insider's game. That's my only thing. But again, I understand sort of the two sides of the coin there. It's just a shame that it wasn't just more openly distributed and wired.
Yeah, that's true. But I do like their distribution model, though, like their tokenomics over the time and how they're concerned about having over 33% in one hand for attacks and Sybil things like that nature. So in a sense, I think that they kind of realized they were going to get that criticism right away, but their way of going about it and the mechanism, I think, works. And it does seem like they're trying to do the right thing. You know, they're not trying to just dump a bunch of stuff out on the market right away and just ruin everything. And it's obviously not a cash grab. You know, you kind of could tell just by talking to Mance. He's a cool guy, and you could tell that, you know, I mentioned they are playing it razor straight. They're playing it by the books, but I really do think that Hashgraph, from what I gather, they have a long-term vision in this thing. They don't come across like there's something like, oh, well, if it doesn't work this year, screw it. We'll just like up and the team will move on to the next thing. I mean, this sounds like we're going to be hearing about it in 5 years, 10 years. Yeah. You know, that's what I'm feeling about this. So for me personally, I was interested in that, and I was also actually excited about the tech and the fact that the CEO actually knows what he's talking about, which is really cool, because sometimes you meet a CEO and they have no idea.
They're basically just like other blockchain thing. I don't know. It's like
stuff, it's right? Like, why are you this? So that was impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, I like the terminal nodes too. I like that. What did they say? Only 6 years or 8 years max, and then they can't do it again, which I think is a really cool kind of way to take on that.
It'll be interesting to see who the partners are, right? Like once it's released in September, it'll be
definitely not a big game.
The one thing that was kind of scary though, and I don't know if anybody just kind of skimmed over this part, but I asked him if there was essentially like a kill switch, and he kind of said like, yeah, there kind of is, but like, we're not going to let it happen. You know what I mean? And that was a little concerning for me. Like the fact that like they blatantly admit that they could shut down the platform, that people may not like that much centralization. So I hope that they do the right thing, and I'm curious to see how that plays out. But what are you gonna do?
I think there's an interesting equation here in that they're not trying to be Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is Bitcoin, right? And that's global decentralized money. Hashgraph is aiming towards enterprise. They want to be that compliant, enterprise ready, no BS. You can build your multi-billion-dollar company on top of our stuff and not worry about the community forking the code and all kinds of drama happening. We're going to be consistent. Yeah. And that's their value proposition, and it's different from Bitcoin, and that's something you can understand when looking at Hashgraph.
Yep, I dig it. I definitely think it's something that we should keep an eye on. It's really exciting stuff.
It's just so unique, and you know, I'm always interested in these unique different things. You know, when IOTA came out, it was the DAG. I've always been interested. Neo had the new consensus, and now we have Hashgraph. So that's just something else to look at. It's more opportunities, and for me, I'm not really concerned about this guy versus that guy. I still consider this to be like a collective community, and you may have your Generation 1 blockchains, your Generation 2, 3 smart contract platforms, and now you have Hashgraph. You know, it's fine. I don't mind. I think it's good. It's healthy competition. And you know, bring it on. Let's do it. You know, for me, it's about bringing this to the mainstream and making this go viral. You know, out in the real world. So if these guys have a plan, and it may not be 100% aligned with the maximalists or whatever, I'm willing to take a step back, let them do their thing, and see where it goes. Honestly, out of pure interest and, you know, just enthusiasm.
Evolution.
It's the future of technology.
Yeah, very cool.